Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to SolarWinds' webinar today on COVID-19 and the impact on UK MSPs. My name is Colin Knox. I'm the host for today and the head of community engagement here at SolarWinds MSP. I was the former owner of a fast growth MSP and was the founder and former CEO of Passportal up until the acquisition by SolarWinds. A little bit of housekeeping as we get started here. All attendees are on mute, and that's not because we don't want to hear from you. That's because we want to ensure the best possible audio quality today. In fact, we do want to hear from you, so please do use the questions panel to ask questions. These presentations are for you, and our presenters here have a wealth of information. So if you have any questions, please do use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar sidebar. And feel free to ask questions at any time. Please do let us know if you have any audio or video issues. We find if you do have audio issues, it may be better to switch to phone call and dial in versus computer audio. And before anybody asks, this session is being recorded and will be made available to you after the show. Go ahead and introduce our presenters for today. I'm joined by two gentlemen. David Tulip is the Managing Director at Network Group, a peer group, working group of MSPs over in the UK there, and he's got over 15 years experience in the space. There's more than 80 member MSPs within NBG, and he's been meeting weekly with all these MSPs to understand the impact COVID-19 has been having on their business. And then also joined by Perry Ashby, the CEO of Urban Network and chairman of Network Group. He's been running an MSP for 18 years. Was the previous vice chair of CompTIA and a strong advocate of peer groups and peer-led communities. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon or good morning to you, Colin.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to have you guys on. So before we jump into the content, let's launch a little bit of a poll for the audience here and just get an understanding of how you would summarize the level of impact COVID-19 has had on your business so far. Has it not really had an impact, kind of just been nominal, a little bit of revenue loss or operational challenges, been a little bit more significant, or is there some concern that this could be an extinction event for your business? So we'll open up the poll. Any guesses for you guys, gentlemen?
So if I was going to pick on this, it would be a significant impact. The things that are changing. We are in a new environment right now.
We'll give a few more seconds here for everybody to get some votes in. Let us know how they've been impacted, and we'll see where this lands. It's always interesting to see these polls sometimes, and when you do them across various sessions, it's amazing how varied the results can come in. So we've got a few people on the line who said it really hasn't been an impact. 86% said it's been at least a nominal impact, and 10% have had significant impact. So let's hopefully get some good feedback for everybody so that we can keep this at a nominal impact across the board and minimize risks. So Dave, you here, you've been meeting with these members on a weekly basis. How are you seeing COVID-19 impact the member companies?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's David here speaking. I think it's really interesting there, the results of that. From the pulse of our membership, which is across the UK and Ireland, 70% was the feedback in terms of nominal impact, 25% significant, 5% none. I think they were trying to be funny, but right now most people are seeing it as nominal, which I find interesting because I think I agree with Perry. But let's be frank, this impact is significant. I think maybe right now there's a bit of a safety net or a bit of the realization hasn't fully hit us. I think the real impact is coming down tracks. That's my view.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where you can see there's kind of a growing groundswell where up front, we got the rush, maybe bills are still being paid, things like that. But as it progresses and as it turns into a longer tail situation, it can definitely start to have a more noticeable impact. So with the impacts that we see and understanding that while this is a health crisis, there's obviously a financial impact and financial aspect to it. There's a number of options for financial relief and financial relief opportunities, especially at the UK-based MSPs have theirs. So How about you guys kind of walk us through some of what these options are for everybody and give some insight?
Yeah, happy to do so. So, listen, I am neither blue nor red in terms of political terms, but I think our government has acted fairly well and quickly from a financial point of view. There's easy ways to find fault in various bits and pieces, so I won't take that route. But I think from a financial point of view, for business on the whole, there's been a lot of good stuff that has been introduced. So looking at that first piece, the job retention scheme or furlough, hopefully many of our listeners are familiar with or involved in that piece. Maybe I'll return to that one in a second, but this is the piece where we can receive 80% support for a PAYE employee's pay up to £2,500 per month. So that's quite significant in many a space. I'll come back to that one if I may, but if I can just skip on to some of these other ones as well, Colin. Obviously, there's the ability to claim statutory sick pay from day one, which again is to our benefit. The small business grant scheme or the rates relief, there's £10,000 or to £25,000 in grants to be had there, which is down to the local authority. In theory, you need to do nothing, but I would suggest if you haven't, it's worth going onto your local authority's website, looking under business rates and registering or applying. Money's already come through on that piece to businesses out there, so that's something very worth doing. The next one's maybe a bit more contentious or interesting, the CBILS or the Business Interruption Loan Scheme. So listen, for me, if I'm looking to take that, I need to be asking what I'm going to do with that. It's nice, it's interest free, it's money that maybe I could sit in the bank to protect me, to carry me through, but I need to think wider than that. I need to think about how I'm paying that back in 12 months time and how that works, what that looks like. So for me, there's some alarm bells around that piece. It has also been slow to process. The government have stepped that up lately in terms of application processing, but I think there's wider consideration for our UK MSP community just to think about that and what that really looks like. I think about one of our members that has a decent sized MSP, probably £4 million revenue. They have built a business over a long time, have good money in the bank and have good value in buildings, but if they, because again, the banks are looking to secure these loans. So what if this all goes wrong? So I think you need to look at reality on that loan option and what that really looks like. So I think our MSPs or our wider business community has a lot of tough decisions to make. So moving on to the next one, deferral of VAT payments. That's a no-brainer really. You do need to make your return. Just if you're on direct debit, cancel that, but make sure you make your return, and that just gives you some cash flow potentially as you apply for things like the furlough relief to come through that ties you over. And then finally, there are other things out there, future funds, there are protection for those who may be tenants to be protected against eviction and things in these tough times. So they're I guess some of the key things there, and maybe we'll come in on some Q&A at the end of the session more specifically. But if I could just, if it's okay, Colin, take a couple of minutes on the furlough.
No, absolutely. Just jump back to furlough here, and I'll just remind the audience, if you have questions about some of the stuff on financial relief or other ideas or things you've seen, feel free to put them into the questions panel. This is interactive. So, but yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Perry, actually. Perry, have you furloughed any staff? Yeah, Urban Network.
No, currently not, and it's something I'll cover off why we haven't done that within Urban Network a bit later on some of these slide decks. But sure. right now, we haven't done that. That's not to say we won't, David. We're monitoring it daily and we're making decisions weekly. Is how we're operating within Urban Network right now.
So let me share some stuff on furlough, and the good news for the audience is I'll probably be a bit quieter after this. For me, furlough is a no-brainer, but let me caveat that, because it's a great scheme. It now runs to the end of June. I can get support from my staff. So right now, and we'll come on to sales in a bit as well, but right now isn't necessarily the easiest time to sell as such in the old-fashioned way. Maybe I don't need quite as much admin as I had previously with the current situation, the current climate. So there is opportunity to take advantage of the government scheme there, but I think it's a political thing, as in a company political thing. So if you consider this, what if Colin and Dave are furloughed off and we're basically being paid 80%, maybe the company choose to top us up to 100%, and we're being paid to paint the house or to do the garden right now, which I'd be quite happy to do. Obviously, if you're earning a larger salary, then that has its own implications. But for many people, depending where you are regionally or what your role is, that could work really well. But what's the politics? We're on support desk. You've got Perry and John that are running around their hamster wheel faster than ever. So as much as it's a no-brainer to furlough, it does bring some political considerations for your organisation. We have furloughed 2.5 staff within Network Group. One of those is in events, another is in the sales arm of our organisation. That's the half. And another one's in member services. So we're taking advantage of that. It's a 3-week minimum. We've done it for an indefinite period as per the letters, and we review it now having completed 3 weeks. But it makes a lot of sense for me. I'll leave that one there. Maybe we can pick up later if there's questions.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Very good feedback here, guys. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about financial relief, we are going to launch another poll for the attendees to just see, you know, with that in mind, are you planning to apply for government financial relief? So this is something that I think will be interesting to see how this poll plays out, given, you know, that most people on the call have said it's been a nominal impact. You know, so this one might be a little bit more telling when it comes to, you know, are you thinking maybe it's a nominal impact because you're applying for financial relief or got some financial relief, or you know, where does that land? So we'll leave that open for a couple seconds here and get a few more poll responses in. And yeah, 48%, nearly half of the people have already applied. 7% will, but haven't applied yet. 15% not, and 30% just not sure. So I mean, for those that are not sure, this is kind of those times. I mean, we've at SolarWinds have been doing a number of webinars to just help support MSPs through this period. And so if you haven't checked out any of our past webinars around, you know, some of the financial relief stuff, some of the revenue preservation, strategic operational priorities, I'd encourage you to check out the SolarWinds COVID-19 Resource Hub. We'll get the link to that dropped in the chat of GoToWebinar here, but you can link to it from our homepage and check some of those out, because this is a really good time for you to be assessing and evaluating what your financial position actually is in your business, to really understand, do you need relief? Will you? How much might you need? And what all of your options are. So, yeah.
So Colin, yeah. Just jumping in there very quickly. That's a really interesting stat that's just come back from the attendees there. That it would be interesting to understand from the Q&A later if the reason that the nominal impact was so high was because these guys are quite forward thinking and they've applied for the help that they need, and therefore it's lessened the impact should I say, in their businesses. That's it's just quite a telling two pieces of information that you've surfaced there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's exactly interesting, and it could be that the anticipation as the impact won't be as high thanks to some of the government relief.
Indeed. So yeah, it might be worth exploring that a bit later if we get time to understand it, if that is the case.
No, I agree, Perry. So I'll maybe turn it to you, Perry, since you just jumped in here. But when we're talking about some of the adapting of operations, you know, how are you at Urban Network and some of the member companies adapting their operations in response to COVID-19?
Sure. I don't mind taking that. So obviously, let me start with Network Group. Network Group, amongst its membership, it is split. It's not 100% MSP community. We do have transactional members and retail-based members, so that some of those have operations, you know, have shop fronts as opposed to offices, and their operations have been impacted significantly. So if I move on to the MSP side, just within our Network Group, without doubt, operations have been impacted. You know, not only have they had to deal, you know, 3-4 weeks ago with everyone wanting to work remotely, whether their infrastructure could support it or not. The question was the same no matter what the client position was at in terms of infrastructure, was they needed to work remotely. But internally, the MSP is probably in a better position to work remotely because they would have already been using a majority of the tools that enable them to do it, albeit cloud-based systems or just remote connectivity to their on-prem infrastructure. But they still had to adapt their own operations to that, so that they're being pulled in two directions, or sometimes many more directions, very quickly and at a high stressful pace. So adapting it wasn't really an option. It was something that had to happen from within. Get your own team straight and operating at the highest capacity you can. I feel if you look back at your own client interactions now, that the operating capacity is probably 70% at best for most of these people, and that will be demonstrated or reflected in your ticket volumes probably, at least in the last week or so. But prior to that, when the statements were made, the impact was significant. And we in Urban Network and across all of our members, and I'm sure all of the attendees on this call, it was a call to arms. You just had to do the best you can to get these guys not only operating remotely, but in the safest possible way. When you ask about adapting our operations, where I think some people, including within Urban Network, you adapt some of your operations around your cybersecurity stance. The reality is, you need to step up that security and ensure at this time more than any that your clients are aware of that risk. But on the other side, you've got these clients asking you, look, I need to work from home, and I've got little Johnny's laptop that he takes to school, and that's the only thing I can use. So you've got to have that balance between making sure that they're secure and making sure that your clients can continue to work. You need them to work. You need them to operate and generate revenue so that they can pay you and you keep your revenue. In terms of day-to-day operations, I believe it's brought some of our teams close together in terms of communication, because we're very defined around the calls. We have some members that will that will have calls daily, updates. So they'll have their morning huddle or their morning call, and then they'll have a daily wash up, 15-minute call with the team. And they're continually communicating, asking questions about what's going on especially on the service desk side, what's going on, where there's problems, if anyone can help with a particular incident or issue. And the activity that I see within my own business on that is, I think it's threefold what it normally is, when sometimes the guys sit there and they might put headphones on and work, as opposed to just communicating and asking and using the hive mentality around problem solving. So I feel many of us are not going to be the same or not operate the same when we're finally allowed to disperse back into our normal lives, of whatever that normal life may look like.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's even a whole conversation in itself, is what the new normal looks like after this.
It is certainly. I mean, if I look internally within Urban Network, we've always encouraged working from home, except for our service desk. I've been quite a strong advocate of, I like the service desk together, one team, one bank of desks, effectively, as much as we can achieve that. And I want them communicating, because I believe that collaborative mentality around problem solving and delivering a higher level of service. But this has shown me that my view was probably not, or I shouldn't have held such a strong view. So there's a bit of humility there that, look, you've got to appreciate these guys are still operating really well. We can still measure, we can still work and allocate tickets and incidents, whatever we need to do, no matter where they are. I think the piece then comes in, as we're now moving into a month of this, is their well-being whilst they're at home, as opposed to their ability to perform. And it's where we're pivoting now, and I would urge other people on the call to, if they aren't thinking about it, to start thinking that piece, so that you've got to appreciate some of these guys are sitting at a kitchen table or a sofa with their laptop and working. Just physical well-being is is something I think you need to start asking them. And the mental side of that is certainly an area that we need to start as owners, if there are owners on there or owner managers, that start making those questions or asking those questions, so that we can ensure that the well-being of all our teams as well. That if they're happy, if they're feeling good, we continue to deliver a good service. So I think that's a piece that may well be overlooked by a lot of people in the scramble to just deliver the service and make sure that we can still operate.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that was some really good feedback overall on operations. Was there anything that you wanted to add in there, David?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, really, so what we've seen from an operational point of view, of course, is that huge spike that Perry mentioned about where there was the scramble to mobilize and have people work remotely. We've then seen that drift. So we've seen support tickets across our member organizations drop quite dramatically. There's some little heartbeats in those, but typically they've dropped off largely because that piece of work has been done. So now's a great time to consider what the future of your business looks like, because this temporary normal and new normal to come is going to have a huge impact. We probably will be more streamlined in terms of bodies, to be frank with you. There will be jobs lost out there. Let's be frank, let's be honest. The reality is we are talking to people and saying your recurring revenues could be a third less in a year's time. So how do you prepare for that? What do you do? And there will be tough decisions that need to be made. So with that, now's a great time to invest in tools and process and operations, because as much as revenues may be down, demands will be high. And so the other piece that I think we need to consider is that with this new normal to come, we've gone from looking after one company's one site to one company's 15 or 20 sites, which are their home workers. And what is the impact of that upon us as MSPs? How does that work for us? Do we need to review how we bill and how we support that?
No, absolutely. Definitely with the huge movement to work from home. Now, you made an interesting comment there, which I think just really moves nicely into the next thing, is that a year from now, a lot of these MSPs and a lot of businesses could be sitting at about a third less of revenue. So if we move this forward into a bit of a topic on preserving revenue or minimizing and mitigating that potential loss of revenue, what approaches are your member companies taking to preserve revenue with their existing customers?
Yeah, it's great. If I just come in quickly on that, so before going into preserving them, our first message, and I think we went quite early with bringing our community together, we held our 7th weekly call today with our community, recognising the challenges to come. And our first message was grab your cash, put it under the mattress, do whatever it is you need to do with it, but grab your cash, tighten your credit lines, because it's never been easier if you go back 6-7 weeks to sell a laptop or 300. But make sure you're being paid for those, especially from those you don't know. So our first message was to make sure that you are tight on credit control and be ready for what's to come. I mean, Perry, do you want to pick up on some of the preserving of revenue with existing customers from a sharp end?
Yeah.
So that says, can we reduce our support bill with you?
Absolutely. Now, look, before I move on to a more personal experience across our membership, that's been mixed, hasn't it, David? What we've had are some members saying, I haven't had any clients whatsoever ask me for reductions, and those clients have furloughed staff. They have reduced their own operations one way or another. And we've had other members that, it's a very high percentage of their clients are knocking on their door saying, you need to help us, you need to reduce your costs, or probably not reduce the service, unfortunately, just reduce the costs. If I take that to an urban network perspective, I would say we're probably about 20% of the clients have asked us that question, and we've approached it entirely on a case-by-case basis on their needs, their industry, and what we can do for them. We have to be mindful, and there was a great statement, and I believe it was from Nigel Moore from over at the Tech Tribe that mentioned the phrase of put your own air mask on first before you help others, or your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. So if you're in an airplane crash, and the statement is always fasten your oxygen mask before you help others. This is relative to that. Hopefully we're not in that critical airplane crash scenario, but please look after your own business first. And as David said, our first message to all our members was cash is king. Make sure there's liquidity in your business. Make sure that you have enough finances to keep operating, especially as we come out of this. There is absolutely going to be an up curve on this. And I believe it's going to be quite dramatic. There will be people that haven't prepared and aren't taking this seriously. And those that do will be able to maximize that position. In terms of how we've approached revenue, in the main, we've offered discounts. We've done the odd payment holiday with one or two of these clients. But you have to balance that against risk of, if you're going to offer a discount, please look into that client, not just your own emotive feeling of the client. Look into the client's financial background and how they've paid you, your own payment history. Because if you're offering discounts, if you're offering payment holidays now, will they be there to pay them later? On the flip side of that, a discount, don't discount too heavy where you're still going to over-service them, so that the impact is on you as opposed to them. You need to balance your own needs against the needs of your clients. And I think that the last piece on that, Colin, is really to absolutely do what you can, do what you feel is right for the client, make sure it doesn't impact you commercially, but work with them so that there's a long history. They will remember this for a long time, and they will make, or they will vote with their feet if you're not approaching them in a way that's human. Okay, that makes it, they're struggling as well, but please look at it from their side as much as yours.
And on that, Perry, I'd suggest that rather than taking to preserve revenue, we should be talking to preserve revenue, and hopefully the audience out there, have spoken with all of their clients and customers over the past weeks, because that's the key thing. The message to our guys was to evaluate who your customers are, what their industry is, because again, if their industry is hospitality, then they've fallen off a cliff. My wife runs a hospitality firm. It's not a great time to be in that world. Not a great time to maybe support that vertical. We have one of our members in Ireland that has a very strong presence in hospitality, so it's challenging for them. But you need to be talking to your clients, having that relationship. And the nice thing is, there's an opportunity to educate, because I think or to reinforce, they now realise that we're a key or essential service to their business. Get them on direct debit.
Yeah, I'm sure. Communication is key. You're right, David. We try to speak to as many of the clients, if not all of our clients, not just once, but we're now communicating and asking, are you okay? How is everything? We've proactively gone out to a number of, especially in the hospitality, a very quick story on a religious retreat in the city of London, which is where Urban Network are based, have basically shut their business but opened their doors to the NHS, and they're now taking in recovering COVID patients on the last stages of their recovery, so they don't need hospital equipment as such, like ventilators and such. And they've also offered free accommodation to any frontline staff that are travelled from any other part of the UK into London to help, because obviously London is one of the highest impacted areas. So we thought that was a great thing. So we've basically offered them significant discounts on any service that we deliver proactively without them asking. And we've gone to every vendor that backs us on some of the support, like connectivity and some other pieces, backup and such. And we've gone to them, put the case forward, very specific case to them, and asked for their help. And in the main, albeit other than the smoke and mirrors of the telecoms world, everyone has stood next to us and helped us with that client. And that's a great message to put back to them. So communication, I think, is absolutely key.
Yeah, I think that's all very good points. I mean, to add a little bit of a synopsis to some of what you guys shared there, I mean, it's evaluating all of your clients and breaking them up into the verticals and industries that they cater to and based on their impact. Dealing with things on a case-by-case basis. You do not need to go out and offer some mass special offer to all of your clients, because some of them could actually be doing just fine. Beyond that, you can start with deferrals and payment holidays like you suggested, Perry, and on the cases that require it, look at temporary discounting. So very good feedback. I think, with that information in mind and with some of those suggestions, we'll run another quick poll here for the audience to just see where you all see the biggest opportunities for either preserving or even increasing your revenue. Is it in increasing your security services, increasing the amount of managed services contracts, or maybe up-leveling some of your clients who are doing well to a higher service offering, increasing the break-fix work you're doing, product sales, project work. We know with the work from home movement, that was kind of a project for a lot of people, but this could also have kind of instigated a need to move some projects up, or even uncovered need for other projects to happen, whether that was to be able to support and people working remotely or what have you. If you have other things that aren't in this list, though, as you're doing the poll, feel free to add some of the suggestions and areas that you find for opportunities of revenue preservation in the Q&A panel. And we'd be happy to add those to the list and share those with the rest of the community as well.
Just jumping in here, Colin, I guess what we saw across our membership really falls in line with what we see here in the poll. Is an increase in security services, which I guess is a given. The fact we've mobilised all these staff and had them work from home, so that's there. The big spike, I concur with that. The project work's interesting. A lot of projects have fallen off a cliff. That said, there's certainly some going on. And Perry, you've been busy with some project works, I think.
Sorry, I was muted. I wasn't expecting you to talk to me. So yeah, absolutely. But so I think from an urban network point of view, these were things that either from our existing pipeline, so prospect pipeline, or through our account management process, the way we engage with our clients. They were already on our clients' roadmaps along with this project work, and this situation has pretty much, shall we say, expedited and brought these projects forward. So yeah, we're flat out right now in terms of project work. The urban network team I could actually do with more technicians as opposed to less right now, because the throughput is slightly higher than the manpower we've got. So these guys are working hard for us.
And that seems to even be in line with this poll right now. Is we're seeing more than half of the people here are picking up additional project work, and then another good contingent on security services. So kind of as we step in here to talk a little bit about sales and marketing, I know the question is, are your member companies seeing opportunities for new revenue? But I'm also curious, have your members in the MSPs been able to kind of use this environment and this situation, actually convert some of their break-fix customers to managed services contracts? Granted, there's a guaranteed expenditure there, but with some of the ebbs and flows that can come along with the by-the-hour work and ad hoc work in these types of environments, it can also be very advantageous to be on a flat rate deal. So very curious on that from you guys.
Yeah, let me take that in the first instance, and maybe just to explain for the audience in terms of network group, so our demographics, so 80 members. As an average, it's a £1.6 million turnover MSP with 13 staff that sits in Haverhill in Suffolk in Huddersfield, and they're the trusted advisor for an hour of where they sit. They're the known name, of course, customers everywhere like many of you. So I think in coming back to your question there, are we picking up break, fix and converting? Now, I guess there's a maturity question there in terms of where am I on my MSP journey? And we have a whole tail. I think we have some of the real leading MSPs in the UK and Ireland that are part of our organisation. And then we probably have a whole tail behind that. The nice thing about us is that we're on the journey together and sharing best practice and looking to improve. So I think for many of our organisations, break fix isn't something they do. That said, as mentioned by Perry, we have some retail bricks and mortar type presences and local service companies that maybe are a little bit more break fix. That's probably, I don't know, 15% of our makeup of those. Interestingly, they've been really busy and quite buoyant. In terms of whether it is converting things to managed service at their end, I think maybe so a little bit. And again, a lot of our guys at that end of the managed service side, on that earlier part of the journey or less mature piece, I think they already have things in place. So they already have, you know, that early MSP or those sort of contracts. So I think there is a change there. There's definitely opportunity, but I think a lot of our guys probably already have customers that sit on true managed service contracts. Harry,
Okay.
or Colin, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair, definitely based on that. So with that, then where or are your member companies seeing opportunities for new revenue in this?
Yeah, so let me pick that one up so you're not listening to David all of the time there. So just touching on what David said, it's absolutely right. Within our group, there is a mix, but we provide mentoring. As David said, we're trying to bring these guys on a journey to make them more mature, make them have revenue that pays their bills every month, okay? And then the project work is the extra. So we are taking them on that journey and we are mentoring them. And part of that within the smaller retail, especially retail or transactional, that like to bridge over, that they have seen. I've spoken to one or two of our members that have come to us and asked, how can I frame this to create that fixed fee? So it is happening. There is that transition within that space. But as David said, there isn't a lot of that within our group because it's slightly more mature than that in terms of size, at least. In terms of other revenues, I see the biggest opportunity right now is, as much as I'm not a big fan of the word, is the whole business transformation piece, that everyone is understanding that they need to work differently and they need the right tools to achieve that. You know, the shares in Microsoft and Zoom were increased significantly because everyone was jumping onto these platforms to continue doing what they do day to day. So there's a huge opportunity around education and actually building in a service or relicensing those guys on maybe if you're looking at 365 or Google or one of these platforms, relicensing them or upselling those licenses to add more features, especially around the security, but more around the collaboration. And I think from a initial project piece that builds in transformation of the way they work will ultimately give you higher revenue because you're selling more services, which you then again go into a full circle and consult on to make them better and more streamlined, workflow, process driven, to help them move forward. And that's how you pivot into a new opportunity in the current situation, is how I would approach it.
Just to come in and add to that as well, I think there's definitely an opportunity around the ongoing working from home piece, remote working piece. I think web or content filtering may come to play here if we consider what that new normal might look like from a business point of view. In the past, I'm not talking from an MSP point of view, I'm talking about a small business owner out there, whatever it is I do. Maybe it was me, the execs that work from home, and maybe the sales guys, but everyone else I wanted in the office because I didn't trust them or whatever my culture may have been. So now I'm like, okay, maybe this remote stuff is all right, and maybe we can do this. Do I need to spend as much as I do on buildings? There's an opportunity for savings there in the coming years, I'd suggest. But with that, now is there an opportunity? We've mobilized people quickly at home with some security, but is there an opportunity to build some sort of monitoring, productivity and trust around those pieces to help staff give a fair day's piece of work, and also as an employer know and feel more comfortable with things? So I think there might be opportunities around those sort of things to help businesses to get more from there. Give them peace of mind, I guess, around what's happening out there as we maybe stay a little longer, or maybe as we move forever into this remote working world.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned trust and you mentioned peace of mind. And when I hear those words, I think about security, and security is always a very opportunistic area, especially when it comes into IT. But, you can't help but not notice, or you can't help but notice, sorry, the amount of coverage that security is getting now because of the expanded footprint that all these businesses are working in. Like you said, it's gone from supporting one client in one location to one client in 50 locations. So, you know, we see security as this great opportunity. Maybe you guys and Perry, you could share a little bit about, you know, how are you approaching security with your customers in this environment, and what are some of the things that you're doing to protect your clients like this, and being able to leverage that as an opportunity?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, obviously 3-4 weeks ago, there was an element of not panic, but certainly an importance and a stress factor of, we need to be out, we need to work, and this is the tool I've got, you know, because they've only got desktops in the office, not laptops. They're not already agile working in any way. So yeah, everyone from an end user point of view understands VPN or cloud, really. And we took the stance that we would not allow any personal devices to VPN into their corporate environment at all, unless we took it under management, done the retrospective work to get that into a suitable position. We wouldn't do that. So our initial stance was, well, we'll spin up remote desktop servers, or, you know, we move the data elsewhere. We're now coming back on those, and exactly as David said, of look, this isn't a short-term fix now. We're actually moving into, this is normal day-to-day operations. We need to look at what you've got, where we are, and do you give them corporate-owned devices to work from home and deliver that solution, which most environments already have some sort of setup of it. Do we just add additional security around the BYOD, so that, you know, the personal devices, and all of those are available to us. Most of the MSPs on this call will have their own, you know, security stack or product stack that they can drop onto this. It's just that they haven't had that conversation because they were still in firefighting mode. We all know, what we've seen in our membership is most people are settled now. Most people are at home and they're working in whatever way and shape and form that you've agreed with them or arranged for them. But now's the time to go back to them and start talking. Look, it was in the press last night that we're in this for the long haul. It's not going to be quick. Come on, open the doors. We can all go back to our normal lives. That's not going to be the case. So use that public message to communicate with your clients and say to them, we know this is going to be longer than originally expected. We need to start addressing your security and the way that you're working remotely and accessing that corporate data. And by all means, give them, there's publicly available stats around the volume of increase around phishing activity and network breaches and all of these things that you can use to just back up your story. And I think that's key right now. Is you might have spoke to them originally and you might have got them working. It's now time to go and revisit all of those clients and have a security conversation with them.
Definitely, and to take an approach of education and making it a conversation, not so much as much a pitch, right? Because in this environment, very few people are looking for that quick pitch, but they're looking for areas that they can improve and where they can learn to be better when they understand the underlying reasoning.
Yeah, it's your job to advise them, right? That's entirely your job. Advise, explain to them the risks, try and mitigate those risks with the tools that you're allowed to use. Obviously, if the client's saying, I'm not going to do that, there's no way, then you need to use other methods to offset that so that you're not the one holding that risk. You should never be the one holding an unmeasured or unagreed risk at all. It should entirely be in the client's hand if they make that decision. But it is your job to explain, because if you don't and something goes wrong, you'll be damn sure that they're going to be knocking on your door and asking you why.
I think, so Colin, just to jump in there, I think it's a bit like what you guys are doing here. I think the opportunity presented is to upskill rather than upsell, and it is to educate our customers and prospects. I think that's where we need to be, rather than that pitch that you mentioned. Of course, that's a bit crass, but definitely let's educate and upskill, and rather than upsell.
Oh, excellent point. Good words there. Thanks for the feedback on that to both of you. You know, we'll kind of step forward a little bit here. I mentioned earlier about the COVID-19 resource hub that SolarWinds has put together. The link is in the chat of GoToWebinar here. This is kind of just a central hub where we've loaded a ton of content from the recordings of past webinars I've mentioned, again, about supporting and securing customers, preserving revenue, operational priorities, a whole bunch of things. You'll find access to register for upcoming webinars like this one that we're hosting, and just other information and links to really help you drive through this this whole period right now. We are hosting a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of content, and for SolarWinds partners, we're also running some executive briefings where we're helping MSPs and kind of advising them through how to work through and manage their business through this period, where there's kind of a few stages of being able to support and secure your customers and make sure that they're in the good stance. And then on the other side of that, as you kind of progress through the cycle, it's a focus on strengthening your business. So if that's something that you would be interested in participating in, you're a SolarWinds partner, in the Q&A panel, just let us know that you're interested in participating in some of these, and we'd be happy to reach out and to coordinate that with you. With that, I'm going to step into Q&A. While we're going through some of the questions, I know we're going to pop up a poll. We try to make sure that we drive value for everybody when they're attending these. And so let us know how you'd rate the session and the value of the session that you got out of it today. We're going to keep going with some of these questions here. So an individual kind of put on a question that is, I think, very valid, is how do you find, or how are you finding the conversation about backup and disaster recovery lately, given this changed dynamic? You know, we've heard some things ourselves about some of the move to endpoint backup versus some of the network backup or even cloud service backup. But I'd love to hear your guys' take and experience on what you guys are hearing out in the market on that kind of topic.
Okay, that's probably me in terms from an urban network point of view. That I think the conversation around backup and the security or integrity of the client's data is an easier conversation now. People are a bit more open to it. We've managed to convert a lot more people that we're a Microsoft partner more than a Google. So most of ours are 365, and we've managed to convert more people onto 365, you know, third-party backup tools than we ever did before, where they've always just tried to take the view of it's in the cloud and it's safe, isn't it? It's not just someone else's computer in a data center somewhere. So that conversation has certainly been easier. We've never had or haven't to date had any conversations around I want to back up the endpoints. We've always taken the approach that we will use the tools that are available to push that data into whatever data repository it may be that's more secure, so cloud or file storage or NAS or whatever those things are, fans. So I haven't had that conversation in terms of endpoint, certainly, Colin, but we definitely have an easier conversation around the integrity of the data and the ability of them accessing that data if they're not in their office, which is obviously 90% of the UK population now are experiencing that.
Interesting, excellent. Well, it's generally nothing quite like a bit of a disaster or crisis to really put an emphasis on disaster recovery and backup procedures. So if that's something where you've had clients that haven't been necessarily partial to that kind of conversation in the past, this is one of those opportunities too, because you have so many different dynamics now, even with home computers and shared computers that are accessing your cloud storage or cloud services, things like that, which can introduce this whole other, again, expanded footprint of opportunity for accidental data deletion, data corruption, introduction of ransomware potentially. I mean, it's one of these things that becomes more real because you're no longer securing in kind of four walls. You're securing everything outside of the four walls now. So That's one of those things. What other advice do you guys have, kind of just generically, for the MSPs going through this, pandemic as it stands today? We've talked a lot about operations. We've talked a lot about security, sales, revenue. What kind of key advice, and maybe we'll maybe not make it so broad, but when it comes to communicating to employees and communicating to your clients, what tips and best practices can you guys offer there?
I'll kick off. Yeah. So on the broader topic of well-being, mental health, which something we've looked at for a long time within network groups, something we promote the importance of. I think there's a storm coming down track on the back of all of this for us as a nation and worldwide, right? There's going to be, as much as we feel we're okay right now, that the damage is to come. There will be businesses that are disappearing. There will be people losing jobs. There will be people losing homes. Sorry to be a pessimistic optimist, or is it an optimistic pessimist? I'm not sure. But the reality is, listen, there's things coming that aren't going to be great, and we need to be looking after our people. To be able to look after our people, so it's about relationships, whether that's for many of us, I guess our customers are our friends, the people we see in Sainsbury's or used to see in the pub, right? So I think we have a duty to look after our people, our friends, our colleagues, but to do that, we've got to look after ourselves. And to you business owners, owner managers out there, consider that. You need to be creating routine for yourself. In fact, Perry and I have spoken about this the past couple of days, because we've been very out of routine. We've been working silly hours again. You need to get away from your kitchen table, from your dinner table, whatever it is, and take a walk and do these things. You need to be talking with your staff daily, twice a day, having those huddles and making sure they're okay. Let's bring virtual physical. Send your staff a pizza, send them a can of beer, whatever it is. Have some fun and engage. I think it's really, really important that you do that. I don't know if you want to add to that, Perry, or subtract.
Yeah, well, I think I'll underline the statement around, first of all, focus on you. Okay, if you're not in the right frame of mind, you cannot help anyone others. You cannot lead your team if that team is you and one other, or it's team you and 20 other. You have to be in the right frame of mind yourself. So make sure you take the time out there, as difficult as it may be, and then focus on your team. They're the lifeblood of your business. Make sure they're happy. Make sure they're active, both mentally and physically. So the same as what we're saying about yourself. Make sure that your team are doing that. Constantly communicating with them I think it's really key. We run virtual pub nights every week, so every Friday we get everyone in, and we just sit there and have a beer at 4:30 and work. So we cut the day short, and we just chat. And I quite enjoy those. I enjoy some of those, and the old traditional style of going into a bar with these guys. Sometimes it's been really interesting. So make sure you do that first of all. Other activity, I've mentioned it on this call already. Keep communicating with your clients. If you're the owner or a manager of the business, especially, pick up the phone. Don't just send an email and then just change the name at the top and resend it to the next client. Pick the phone up and ask them. You'll be amazed at the conversations you have. Don't just speak to them about this situation. Don't speak about business. Just ask them if they're okay. It really does open up a whole different conversation to the clients that you may have dropped out of touch with a little bit as well. Or taken them for granted, or just a bit nervous of talking to them because you might lose them. They're that sort of volatile type client. Just right now is a great time to pick up the phone and talk to them.
No, I couldn't agree more there. Those owner-to-owner conversations just drive such a stronger partnership and forge that stronger relationship by being able to reach out, stand out, not by an email, but picking up that phone, talking to the owners, and just being open about what's going on and what you're doing to help them, and then taking the time to listen. Yeah,
it's key, Colin, and even sharing your problems. So talk to them exactly that. That's a great piece of information. Is to say, look, we're experiencing a bit of difficulty. The ticket volumes were up. We're settling down. but unfortunately a few people are unwell, so you know we're struggling a bit now in terms of manpower. Whatever that may be, it's well worth just saying that it's that ability to, the moment you let your defenses down, they will. The typical stance of anyone when you say, hi, how you doing, how's business, their default stance is, yeah, really good, really busy, because that's their mask. That's them hiding what the reality is. If you share first, I think you get a bit more from it. I think the last bit from me on planning and last messages is plan for what activity is going to happen after. We've all spoke about it on this call. It's not going to be a finish line and we all finish and we'll walk out into the sunshine and enjoy ourselves. It will be gradual, but many of you have probably stopped some activities, especially around communication, marketing, sales, whatever that may be. Plan for that now. Even start trickling some of that back in. It's really hard to get the momentum back up to where it was. So try not to stop it entirely. Just keep something going so that you can move back into that ebb and flow of whatever that looks like for you. It's important that David mentioned earlier, there is going to be fallout from this. If you keep communication lines open and work with your clients, you will not be the MSP where clients are leaving. But there will be, I guarantee you, a lot of them that will not survive and not servicing their clients in a way that we're talking about here. So I think it's really good to start. If you've got free time, things are quieter for you, start using it to plan what your business is going to look like in 3 months' time, what you're going to do different.
And to underline that, Perry, and circling back to kind of the start of this whole session, there's a slight concern for me as I look at the numbers that are already applied for government schemes and support. There was 48% that said they had and 7% that were planning to. So 55% of our audience were using or looking to use the government assistance. Just to put that in perspective, and maybe it's because we went early in terms of our comms with our wider membership, but we have 75% have already taken advantage and a further 15% that are planning. So almost twice as many that have engaged for that support. Go and pick up on that support. It's there to be used. Some of it needs consideration. There's no point just acquiring debt or putting yourself in a position. But there are things there that are free money, free assistance, free help that will give you peace of mind. And again, maybe it's great that we feel the impact is nominal. Again, my wider organisation, I'm talking half of them feel that. On this call, I think it was 70%. So I think there's some reality that's going to bite some of us as we go forward with this. Let's be as prepared as we can, and let's talk with people, talk with your peers. Yeah, no, definitely agree. And I think that's with looking at where the time is and with that final point, I think you guys have put the perfect bow on this conversation. I think there's been a ton of great feedback. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. I thank everybody for taking time out of their days to also participate and attend and listen to some of the advice and guidance here. So, that's pretty much all the time we've got today, but thank you guys very much for participating in this.